everybody to the annual Food Connect Foundation Humungous Fungus celebration. A little bit different this year. Normally we would have a room full of care holders in the shed, all enjoying a beautiful dinner. But unfortunately this year things have just got a little bit overwhelming in terms of our schedule and everybody else's. So this is the next best thing, going online, and probably will reach more people once we've sent out the recording, which will be nice. Before I start, or we start, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country that I'm standing on tonight, which is the Awabakal people of the Newcastle region. We're down here for family business at the moment. And I just want to pay my respects to elders past and present. And also just to acknowledge the huge role that First Peoples have in teaching us the ways of this country and how important it is in our work in food and farming to really open up the dialogue, to, you know, learn and listen to the wisdom that is there and is coming through the land, which a lot of our farmers are getting a sense of, I feel, like Lisa, who you meet tonight. So a little bit about us. The Food Connect Foundation is a very small not-for-profit. It's mainly Robert and I, with a couple of support staff and a wonderful small board. And it's been going since 2009. And basically we work on food systems transformation. And we're looking at food systems transformation mainly through regenerative immune systems. So basically what that means is we learn this stuff through community, and wherever we can, we want to dialogue around how we can change food systems for the better. And many of you would know us from Food Connect days. We recently shut down the business, but have been going for 18 years, working with communities and growers in delivering fresh local produce to city people. We'll tell you a little bit more about our projects at the end of the night, but I just wanted to introduce first Robert Pekin. He's one of the executive directors at Food Connect Foundation, and he will introduce David and Lisa. Over to you, Rob.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all tonight, and those that listen to the recording a bit later on. We're really happy to have David Hardwick from Soil Land Food join us tonight. He was the convener, or the organizer, or not the organizer, we were the organisers, but David facilitated the Healthy Soils workshops for around 80 farmers over a period of it was 3 or 4 months. There was 8 workshops held, and they were really well attended. And from all the surveys we got back from farmers, there was a lot of really positive feedback about how much they learnt, how much they could take back to their farms and practice and learn things. So this short seminar is to sort of follow up, celebrate the award winner of the Humungous Fungus Award, which we've held now for 4 years. And as Emma said, we always hold it at the Food Connect shed, but for reasons, for other reasons, just a lot of things just haven't planned well this year. We haven't been able to hold the Humungous Fungus live at the annual careholder dinner of the Food Connect shed, which is always, I always remember at the front, there's always these young farmers at the front, always very keen to participate in the shed event. So so welcome to you one and all. We're going to start off the night by congratulating Lisa as this year's winner, well, actually last year's winner of the Humungous Fungus Award. I haven't got the soils results in front of me, but they were based on microbial content that one of our care holders, who was former president of the Australian Soil Science Association, coordinates and does, and sends out all the results. I don't know if you've got your results yet, Lisa, but Lisa, absolutely congratulations, well done. If you can hold up your award, we already sent Lisa the trophy, which every farmer gets, which is this beautiful award designed by one of the directors of the Food Connect Foundation, one of the former directors of the Food Connect Foundation, who is also on the board of the Food Connect Shed, Gala Watson, a Birragubba and a Kungaloo woman from up on the Dawson River, who works with us here pretty closely, and her and the Watson clan are a very important group of Indigenous people in Brisbane who do a lot of work with community, both black and white, and we find them their teaching, particularly the teachings of Aunt Lilla Watson, really instructive in how we do things. So the award is both a treasured trophy, as you can see, that looks really fantastic, but it comes with all that that Indigenous First Nations sort of culture and epistemology that's built into it. So well done, Lisa. Yeah, would you like to tell us a little bit about your farm and what you do there? And perhaps perhaps we can kick off the discussion by you talking to us about some of the things you do in the soil, and maybe that can bring David into the discussion. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your farm and your operation and what you do, and about yourself.
Well, thank you, Rob and Emma and Dave and Food Connect. I was quite surprised for the trophy to have appeared in the mail. I was actually expecting a large carton of Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. So I was a little bit surprised by the beautiful trophy. So thank you. So just super quick. I, by trade, am actually a perioperative nurse, so I consider myself a part-time, non-traditional farmer. So I feel a bit nervous about accepting an award of this stature because, yes, it's not my main career path. So that makes it extra special to me. So thank you. But yes, going back to the farming side of things, I basically focus on growing dragon fruit, which is kind of stemmed from my permaculture designed property. And just in 2020, actually, just before COVID fully kicked off, is when I thought was a good time to launch my little micro business, I guess you can call it. So that's how I started to step into the farming world.
And what is it? What type of soil is it? And perhaps what did you learn at the Healthy Soils course that David put on?
So we are living and working on Gubbi Gubbi country, which is in the Moreton Bay region, Deception Bay area. So that's coastal alluvion plains, so very sandy. Water drains through it very quickly because we're also part of a floodplain, which poses some of its other challenges. So yeah, so that's the soil that we are dealing with. So very little nutrient holding capacity and water holding capacity. In regards to what I learnt from the workshops, so much. So I think the main thing that it highlighted to me was I know very, very little about soil. So attending the Healthy Soils workshop actually pushed me further down the pathway of a lot of reading and a lot of research more into soil. So consequently, the last year I've just been learning a lot more about soil and the soil food web, and recognizing I still don't know hardly anything. Still got lots to learn. So I'm very interested to hear what David has to share.
Cool. Well, that's amazing that you're on that soil, and your tests come up so high in microbial content, because I know the challenges of working with those sort of sandy soils. Thanks, Lisa. Now, I'd like to introduce you all to now David, who probably you all know if you attended the Healthy Soil courses. David obviously is a very humble person who a lot of people experienced throughout particularly the 4 earlier courses. David was working with us back in the early days of Food Connect. Just to give you a bit of an introduction to David, that some people might not know of, but when Food Connect was launched in 2004, and by about 2007, I think it was, David, we were growing very quickly, and we had all sorts of dreams and aspirations. And for those that don't know, Food Connect started as this idea around an ecological farmer at the time. We weren't distinguishing between organic farmers or biodynamic farmers or Calathumpian farmers. It didn't really matter to Food Connect. We wanted to have a cohort of farmers who had good character and were approaching their farming from more an angle of where they had agency over the soil and their farm, and they contributed where they felt they needed to contribute, rather than a prescriptive model. And so David worked with a bunch of us on when we got a bit excited about this concept called participatory guarantee system, but we wanted to put that into an Australian context and develop our own model. And so David was pretty heavily involved in that idea around farmers, peer groups of farmers working together to verify and validate and to educate each other around soil science. So it's great to see you again, David. Thanks for joining us on the call tonight. Perhaps if we can start off by asking you a little bit more about a year's gone on. Has there been, in the soil science world, has there been anything new that perhaps the people would like to learn about tonight? I mean, Lisa said just then that she's, and I think a lot of people experienced at your course, a lot of new information presented in a way that was really tangible and they could take back to their farm, which is quite a stimulating feeling, because then that sort of, puts you on the road towards being more curious and leaning right into things. And I'm sure those that are on the call tonight or want to hear the recording a bit later on will be really curious to hear from you what's happening in the soil science world. Is there anything new? Is there anything that
there's always new things, Rob. Thanks for having me, and g'day Lisa and everyone for joining us. Thanks very much for having me. I'd say first up, Rob, the understanding of soil systems and ecological systems and the plant, soil, people, human, animal interactions is just it's just an explosion really of understanding the microbiomes and how that influences human behavior even probably is where it's all going. I think, as Lisa, you really well highlighted, once you start on your journey into soils, it does go on and on and on. There's not really any end to it. But I think, Rob, probably the perspective that's emerging around soils is that they're self-organizing systems, and that we really just facilitate this complex adaptive system, if I can use that jargon, to help enable itself, if you like, to find an equilibrium. So really you're just a kind of, a helper rather than a controller. Or so really it's just about learning how to facilitate change in that system, so because it will go on its own pathway, no matter what soil type you're on. So I guess, seeing the soils as a self-organizing system is probably where I think things are going, Rob, which fundamentally changes the way you manage your soil, because in a way you're just a partner in the process with the microbes and the plants and the diversity, which is quite different than the old days where you had dirt over here and a plant over here, and you had to make the plant fit in the dirt or had to fix the soil so the plant could grow in it. It's quite a different view, this sort of 21st century view.
Yeah, totally. No, that's and I'm keen to lean into it maybe a little bit later on about how you're seeing this is now influencing, or the potential ways this can influence human behaviour. Certainly we know it influences from a health point of view. If you have a healthy plant and you eat that healthy plant, then obviously it correlates that you're going to be healthy. But as they say in the world of farming, it's the paddock between the ears is the biggest paddock to sort of is the biggest paddock to work on. And quite often, as you were just saying then, that in complex adaptive systems, as managers or as farmers, I hate to use the word manager because it's sort of it's a very very new word in ecological timing, but the idea of facilitating or observing and then doing what you can do as the person who has, can sort of, do things on that landscape. I'm very curious as to how we do that more in terms of the paddock between the ears. But that's getting more into social ecology.
Yep.
Lisa, what have you got any? Is there anything happening in your soil that you've sort of got while you got David that you'd love to query him on?
Well, just as we were mentioning earlier, I have the very sandy soil in a floodplain with the associated effects of compaction. I guess my question for you, David, would be, is there any methods that I could employ to help the soil decompact itself? Because my limited understanding is if I kind of feed the soil, then the soil life, both earthworms and all the other food web, generally does that. But is there anything else added into that situation?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a couple of things, like obviously, paddocks that get inundated regularly on floodplains, they tend to set hard. They tend to have that behaviour where they will set hard and go dry, depending on how much clay content's in them, but they can be quite problematic. I guess, Lisa, the extra dimension to what you've just mentioned in terms of the microbes and organic matter and all that, and helping to build and maintain that well aggregated structure, which is what you're chasing, is having the living plant roots are really a key facilitator of that. And I guess with your dragon fruit being a perennial horticulture crop, the big challenge is under the canopy zone of the rows of dragon fruit. Are you growing it on trellises, or how are you growing the dragon fruit, Lisa? You've got it.
So the bulk are on individual posts. I am experimenting with a couple of trellises. Yeah.
But the challenge is in that under row of the fruits to try and make sure that's not bare and balance the dragon fruit's needs with having living covers underneath. So I guess that's the challenge. Can you get not just mulch and or compost in there, but some low growing living plants? Have you been able to get that living ground cover through the orchard?
Yes, that's been one of my strategies I have been trying to employ. I guess my challenge with that is what I have interplanted so far is also mainly shallow rooted, which so are the dragon fruit. And I guess finding like the deep root species, I guess, as a permaculture plant like comfrey to get to the deeper layers. And so that zone, I guess I need some more plants to fill.
Yep, finding the niche chicory, some of the subtropical deep-rooted, tap-rooted guys, to give you that'll be the goal. Having some fibrous root systems that are shallow is good, but I guess when you're looking at under the row, it's about not just getting cover and mulch, but trying to get something alive in there, as well as the dragon fruit, to help stabilize structure in particular and maintain that good biologically driven aggregation, which is what counters that hard setting occurrence that happens after a flood event. You get this silt deposited and then things set down on your hard, and really that's the counter force for it. That's the only counter force for it in the long term, really.
Okay, so a lot more deep rooted living cover.
Try and experiment with different species, see what it takes, really.
Excellent.
So that diversity is key, isn't it? At all levels below the ground. We often talk about diversity above the ground, but we often don't talk about diversity below the ground. And it's really good to be refreshed about some of those key principles that you mentioned during the course. obviously, we heard the other day that El Nino has been, has been scientifically verified that we're in an El Nino period, and a lot of farmers are nervous out there. David, what's been your advice for farmers who are? I was, to tell you a quick little story. About 3 weeks ago, I went up and spent 2 days with the Trap Rock farmers, which you'd be very familiar with, who have been on this journey as a cohort around biodiversity credits and carbon farming. And of course, they can't store any carbon on those soils. They're pretty, but they have been experiencing, since they added, they have to achieve 20% ground cover of the grassy box woodland at more than 2 meters of height. Since the farmers who have been achieving those goals have been experiencing amazing grass cover and new species of grasses, so much so where the old grasses that used to be really problematic, get into the sheep's skin and through the wall and into the skin, have completely disappeared. But they're, they've been haven't had a lot of rain, and they don't get a lot of rain, but they have been experiencing, well, they're saying, they're 6 months ahead in terms of moisture content, hydration in their soils than their neighbours as a result of having tree cover, which is contrary, completely contrary to the old belief where, you need to knock down the trees because those bloody trees were taking all the moisture.
Taking the water. Yeah, and it is depends on where you are in Australia, you get the different sort of perspectives on it. I mean, around the New England, around Armidale, where I used to live there, south of Stanthorpe as well, like the work done with Southern New England Landcare and a few research projects that were done showed that where you had scattered timber, you just had that moderation of the microclimate. So you actually had longer into autumn when the frosts start hitting and your grass all stops. They had longer grass growth periods, and the same coming out into spring. You just moderate the temperature. And I think this is the key point that those Trap Rock guys are experiencing, and that's really relevant everywhere, especially for tropical crops as well, is that where you get shading, you just moderate the surface temperature of the soil. And there's a couple of things. You lower the evaporation rate, and especially if you've got coverage, but just the temperature drop lowers the evaporation rate. And that immediately changes the hydrology at the site. And what you see in North Queensland, in far North Queensland, in the tropical wet tropics, is where they go back to forest from open pastures or cane fields. There's a certain point when they've revegetated with trees, there's a certain point at which the canopies close in. It's sometimes, the 5th year or 4th year. And at that point, the temperature at surface drops, the shading kicks in, and the site completely changes, the soil changes and the vegetation changes. So I'm not surprised the Trap Rock guys are seeing that microclimate effect. But it does, like in the tropical fruits, often, I'm not sure about dragon fruit, Lisa, I have seen it up in the Dimbula, Mareeba area on a few properties, but I haven't ever done agronomy or anything on it, more than seeing it and done a few sort of soil health projects around growers that have dragon fruit. But a lot of those tree crops, not all of them, don't mind dappled light, like coffee, for example. They're kind of used to a semi-shaded rainforest environment. And other ones are obviously like the wet, dry tropics, where they get a dry period and a wet period. But yeah, having that moderated microclimate at surface rock does change the dynamics, carbon dynamics, moisture dynamics, big time. These are hidden changes you don't see, like the respiration and oxidation rate of the site changes, and you don't see that in real time. I remember a cane farmer telling me in North Queensland, Dave, if nitrogen gas was blue, then everyone would see this blue gas blowing off their paddocks all the time, and they wouldn't over fertilize. You just sort of summed it up really well. And I think carbon respiration and oxidation is another one, and the moisture loss through evaporation. If we could just dye these gases, no, I probably shouldn't do that because we're already trashing the planet. But if you could just dry the gases a particular color and see it all coming off your soil, then it make it a lot more vivid. It's a hidden kind of process in a way, but it's really important.
And can I just ask, David, for somebody who's not a professional, like just seeing the shady side of the trees effect, where the grass is slightly greener than, say, the northern side, is that evidence of what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily just the moisture competition or lack of, it's the whole
temperature.
Yeah, temperature as well, which in turn influences a whole lot of things, microbial activity. So yeah, it's a kind of whole equilibrium, as I talked about before. The equilibrium's different. So yeah, in central Queensland, in the grazing landscapes, obviously you'll get an area with too much thickened timber, and so there's shade and competition for light and moisture, so there's no grass under the trees. But where you've got the right equilibrium, the grass grows right up to the tree trunk, and it's a complementary relationship, not a competitive one. And it's really what we're trying to create, is these complementarity type relationships.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I know some of the other things they were talking about, some of these, and these are very, hard conservative farmers, very buried in the commodity crop world, cheap, and they were saying how, like, they're literally, because there was a CSIRO person there doing a study on the mental impacts of them on farmers who are, transitioning or being transformed, or their farms are being transformed as a result of seeing the increase in biodiversity and how that's affecting their lives. And of course, it's easy for us to observe, but just for them to publicly say, yeah, I'm when I see a koala, like one bloke said, he has koalas now climbing up and down his kitchen window on the outside. The increase in quolls, the increase in all of these things really brings a smile to their face, that they're adding, they're seeing this life that normally, back in my day when my father used to shoot the eagles, thinking that they were eating the sheep, or they were a threat to our couple of 6 or 7 sheep on our dairy farm, to seeing how this complementarity, this idea that they're seeing these 20 grass species they've never seen before, native grasses come through, and seeing these other results in terms of hydrology, the climate, frosts. They don't even worry about frosts anymore when because they know that their farm is not going to be impacted by the frost because of this temperature moderation that's happening. It's quite quite an exciting arena that you must be in to see, because as you say, we can't see physically those atmospheric changes. We can't see them. They're gradual, and all of a sudden there's this flip that happens to I'm sort of
thresholds. Yeah, you go over a threshold.
Yeah. Which obviously there's a lot of people concerned about climate change and concerned about a whole bunch of things. I think the 7th out of the 9 planetary overshoot, the 7th one was tipped a couple of months ago, which is causing great alarm in society. And I've been ferociously reading anything I can get my hands on that is pointing towards not the humanity hitting the wall and then responding, but this threshold that happens before then. So you mentioning this and me seeing that in farms and seeing them they haven't gone in this direction because they've had a massive drought or something or other. Charlie Massey's book, famously cites
a trigger event. Yeah,
a trigger event. They're actually doing it because they want to actually, see their farmscape improve to the particular point where we were on the farm, and these 2 farmers who don't farm biodynamically, organically, or anything like that. And I asked them, I said, how would you describe your farming methodology? And they said, the older brother said, I now see myself as a happy landscape manager. That's how he paraphrased himself. And I was there with Andrew Ward, and Andrew Ward nearly fell over backwards on hearing this farmer. He'd known this farmer for years. Nearly fell over backwards, hearing this farmer call himself a happy landscape farmer. What are you seeing in your travels?
I think, I've definitely seen these kind of transformative changes. About to go to Western Victoria to a big 2-day forum on natural capital with a lot of Western Victorian farmers and graziers, and I think it's the same movement. I think coming back to your idea about all of us learning together, Rob, and this soil health project is about learning as a group, and I think there's a collective momentum an awareness change, more than awareness change, an awareness that we need to take action. I think there's a subconsciously everyone's connected socially, and not just locally, but and through the whole of society. So yeah, I think there's definitely a momentum to change, and it is a positive change. And yeah, I agree that you don't always have to hit the wall before you change, although sometimes being put under high stress events does force change. But yeah, no, I agree that there is a big significant change happening, no doubt. It's a more ecological perspective. It's a modern ecological perspective. It's not, it's a different ecological perspective than say in the 1950s and 60s. So yeah, definitely see a change happening.
And can I just ask David, just with what you were saying, from a more suburban, peri-urban realm, do you have anything to add to people who are growing good quality, decent amount of food in the suburban setting as far as soil and instigating this change? Because I think that's a big sphere as well that could benefit from more understanding of good soil.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think, Lisa, I guess there's a few different ways you can kind of get more engagement with your street and with people around in your locality that you're building a network with. But obviously making compost with food, with your own food scraps and getting people talking around, that's a big one. And the other one is the flavour of food. So there's someone, I live in Albury, in Wiradjuri country, down there at Albury in southern New South Wales, and there's a friend who's a gardener, professional gardener around town, and she grows lots of veggies and fruit in her front garden and just lets anyone in the street just come and take it. And that's a good discussion starter and gets people engaged. So I think there's different ways you can do it, but in terms of practically growing things, I mean, using compost, ideally if you can make it yourself, but if not, just getting a good local compost and just growing something and sharing it with others is probably a really great first step, I think. And the flavour comes out too, the flavour of the food sort of shines out. Rachel used to work up there at, what is it, the farm up there at Mapleton or whatever. Anyway, she came along she's now helping us down at Albury, and she's about to give a talk, and we're going to give people carrots grown under different farming systems and do the taste test, and then talk about why these have different flavours and what does that mean in terms of food, healthy soil, but also people and people's health and well-being.
Yeah, it's a good question, Lisa. I'm giving a talk at the Urban Agriculture Forum in Brisbane in November, and we're going to present the whole system so that urban agriculture and peri-urban agriculture see where they fit in strategically to this movement, because they play such a critical role, mainly around education and informing, the neighbours around, healthy soils, but also they are the first movers in pioneering a lot of new, a lot of things that larger farms find hard to do. And so at a small scale, you can prove and experiment and do lots of things without the sort of risks. And that's really, that not only gives learnings for larger farmers to take and adopt some of those strategies later on, but also the social license you give agriculture and you give food and farming. And we're sort of trying to create this bridge that more mainstream farmers can see how that role that peri-urban and urban farmers play in the system, rather than seeing them as competitive, to see them as a really important piece of the puzzle that they contribute from as they grow more productive. They're on more productive landscapes and they're under a lot more pressure. So it's a really good question to ask, and of course peri-urban farms play that really important role where young farmers can get onto land in an accessible way, which is almost I don't know if you David are keeping up with the price of farmland. It's just extraordinary at the moment, and so it's almost impossible for a young farmer to get on land. So to have these smaller plots that they can go onto and strut their stuff is just it's so important. So great question.
And I think also, I think in the future, peri-urban and urban farming will feed a significant portion of the local population. So I think, you know, we've got to redesign the, you know, as you guys know well, Rob, you redesign the food systems and the supply chains to relocalize them. And so urban farming is going to be a significant, particularly fresh vegetables and fruit.
Diversification within the food system.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Now, is there any questions coming through, Emma?
I think I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
That's good. So there is one comment. Evening was just going to say congrats for winning, Lisa. Someone's obviously absolutely over the moon that you won. And I have a question actually. The first one is, what do you grow, Lisa, specifically? I might have missed that at the beginning. And how do you participate in your local market? Do you have a farmer's market that you sell to? Do you do a swap thing? Like how do you interact with the community in the process that you have underway?
Thanks, Emma. Yes, so I did mention earlier my main crop has been dragon fruit. So I've got the white variety and red variety. So I have a few different outlets for selling. Food Connect was one of my wholesale buyers. So I was very sad on many fronts when you had to close up shop, but that provides other opportunities. I've taken approach to diversify, I guess, my outlet for my produce. So as I said, wholesale was you guys initially. At a more smaller scale, an online farmers market called Rico Rings. So kind of, I think, came from the Netherlands in early 2020. So that's a Facebook platform where people can just purchase directly from the producer, and then there's a designated pickup point. So that brings different producers together and makes it convenient for both the producer and the consumer. And I also have like a little farm gate stall as well for people to drive by, and connected with a few different chefs and schools and cafes just within the local area of where I live. So yeah,
great. I have seen on your Facebook page a few little things that you do at kindergartens. Is it? What do you teach the kids? Do you have a class that you teach them?
So yes, I've been engaging with our local kindy, and they're fabulous with all their environmental learnings and opportunities they provide the children. So they have asked me to come along throughout the year and just present little workshops from topics like where does our food come from to compost and worm farming. And next term we'll be making a bee hotel or bug hotel for the kids, so just to get them engaged early. Yeah,
awesome. That's great. I've got a question here for David from Jeff, and he's going to ask it himself if you can.
Hi David, sorry I don't have a camera here. Very interested in your comments on activating communities using food. I'm trying to do that here in Logan. I live in a set of townhouses with about 50 people, and we've got probably a bit less than an acre of what was grass now starting to be an orchard and garden beds. Unfortunately, it's a clay riverbank that's had a lot of building rubble dumped on it. So it's pretty hard yakka digging, and pretty hard yakka for a plant trying to get its roots down into the soil. So basically I've been trying to build it up on top. Things like citrus are doing okay with, you know, spreading their roots over the soil into the new stuff that we're adding. But I've been planting comfrey to try and, you know, get into that soil and break it up a bit. But I'm just wondering if you have any other suggestions about how to establish trees and things.
Yeah, look, they're very problematic soils. Their technical name is anthroposols, or human-induced soils, basically. And they can be quite varied if they're in urban areas. That, you know, in some areas they could have had light industry on them in the 1930s and 40s, like that rubble. It's just very variable. So they're quite problematic. Well, they can be problematic. So yeah, going up like Donald Trump, just building Trump Tower on them is a good strategy, going upwards. But like compost, really good quality compost, and biochar is probably, if you can get it and it's not too expensive, are probably two other things you could mix into that. Again, just to help, like biochar has a great buffering capacity, particularly if there's chemical contamination. So it's good to think about for that. And obviously compost is just a good all-rounder for intensive soil remediation, really. So apart from like pH, checking the pH on it and liming if the pH is a bit south, or it may not be acidic, but if it is, liming, yeah, I reckon going up with compost and biochar if you can get it. And so building your raised beds is probably the best way to go. But if you do want to plant trees, like long-term orchard trees, then even just doing a little bit of an auger, just hiring or getting a little auger, a whole auger. You can even use those augers that you do to dig out footings to do decks and things, and just having a look at what is actually going on to about a foot down, before putting all the effort into some high value food crops in terms of trees. And then yeah, just trying to moderate it with compost, if it looks really ordinary. So it's really, each site's different, but getting an auger out and having a look is worth doing. But going up is really your best strategy if it's pretty problematic.
Thank you, David. Beautiful.
No worries, Jeff. Yeah.
Right. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a.
Sorry, no, you go. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, sorry, what was your name? Because all I've got on the screen is Oppo, and I'm pretty sure that's the name of your
really?
phone.
No, that's definitely the name of my phone. I'm not too sure why it's doing that. I'm Isaac.
Isaac. Hi,
Yes,
Isaac.
yes. Hi, good evening.
Well, you might as well ask your question. That'll be fine.
Okay, so I like, speaking of what we were just speaking about, adding things to the soil. I'm just wondering, in this Logan area, whether or not you could sort of set up, compost bins to, break down organic matter onto that, that site.
Yeah.
This is for,
yeah.
is this Kel?
No, it was Jeff who said that.
Jeff.
Yeah,
Jeff.
so we've got a network of compost bins and worm farms, and I've got about 8 or a dozen people actively feeding them. So we're generating quite a lot of compost. And I've got our lawnmower man dumping all his grass clippings from all of his lawns on us. So we're getting plenty of organic matter.
Fantastic.
But it's one of my biggest problems is I dug a few, reasonably deep holes, not quite a metre deep, with a crowbar when I started. But a lot of things have suffered from being in that stagnant water. That's essentially stagnant water in the worst cases.
Right.
And like I've killed a couple of avocados. There goes 160.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so you've got drainage issues as well as potential. Yeah, we don't know what the soil constraints are, but you've got drainage issues too. So yeah, again, Jeff, if you've got really expensive, trees like avos, you're going to have to go up with them if you wanted to survive.
Yep, learnt that one the hard way. Yep.
And sometimes it bites you after about year 4 and 5 when the trees get to a certain age.
I'm only 1 year in.
Yeah, so go up and build it up with that organic matter like Isaac's sort of describing.
So sort of like a avocado? Like a
avocado, there you go.
Thanks, Isaac. I love
that's a term. Yeah, that's a term I got down at Zaytuna Farm from Jeff Lawton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was speaking about building up because they're quite particular when the roots go down and touch things they shouldn't be touching. Yeah, so you spoke about
avocado.
This volcano sort of mound of just organic matter and the avocado at the top. Avocado. So
beautiful. All right.
Beautiful.
Thank you all.
No worries.
I'd love to come and check that place out, by the way, Jeff.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, be glad to host you.
Yes, let's connect.
Yeah, Isaac.
Isaac, just you can direct message me with your details and I can
awesome.
pass them on to Jeff for you.
Thank you.
Before we go to Lisa,
Lisa.
Isaac, good to see you. Good to see you, mate. But just a bit of context there, Jeff. Isaac spent a fair bit of time on Neighbourhood Farm with Matt and the team there, and attended the workshop. So it'll be good for you guys to connect. Lisa.
Just two points I just would like to say, as far as my little farm goes, even though I'm not on clay soil, thankfully, the construction of all my gardens were, as Isaac was saying, just building them up to volcano height, and all the organic matter has done their thing. So that was the foundation for all of my gardens and, yeah, produce. So there you go. Sandy or clay.
Well, that's great to hear. Originally, when you first started talking, Isaac, I thought you were talking about having those, you know how they've got those compost bins that go into the ground?
Yes.
Where you have holes. Is that what you were talking about?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. Just like a whole heap of them buried around, you know, just to break down stuff. But anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no.
Just sort of went off on a tangent there.
Yes, you did. You did. Yeah. Are there any other questions there, Emma? Questions? No questions? Okay, cool. Well, listen, we're getting up to, well, it's 5 to 7 now, 5 to 7. So we're probably going to use up our hour unless there's any desperate questions. But it's been great to have you on, David. I'll let Emma tie off the whole thing. But I forgot to mention earlier on that this whole project was funded by the department, or actually, no, I've forgotten. It's a federal.
It was the National Landcare program. Small farms, small grants round. It was 50%, so it was matched funding. So the Food Connect Foundation funded the other half. And just on that, I just want to thank Gabby, who's on the call tonight with Kel. She was the main volunteer that looked after the application to get this grant, and it was just such a wonderful experience for the whole team, Nat, Jessie, to organise the events, and for Rob and I to participate as well. It was a great experience to reconnect with a lot of Food Connect's farmers and also their neighbours and people in the district who Food Connect didn't have a direct relationship with, but now we've made a whole bunch of new friends. So all up, it was a great success. Around 80 farmers in the southeast Queensland region attended one or both workshops, and all popped their soil tests in. I think about 40 soil tests got done in the end. Not all of them submitted, but it certainly contributed a lot to the learning that soil land food is just so brilliant at, and expose them to David's wonderful methods of teaching. So thank you, David. Your contribution has been life-changing for a lot of people, I've heard firsthand.
Thank you for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, it was a
I can't believe
fantastic
people still
experience.
remember the tofu. That blew me away. There were still people with Sue's tofu.
Well, it was pretty top class tofu.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. I miss it all the time. Don't worry.
We need to clone Savada, I think, don't we?
Yeah.
No, yeah. For those that aren't, it's a bit of an in-joke, but when David was working, he was a farmer for Food Connect, but his wife Savita actually manufactured tofu up in Stanthorpe when he lived up there, and it was a premium product that a lot of Food Connect customers. I don't know, Lisa, if you were around back then, but when David and Savita moved to Armidale to go and farm down there, we lost that product, and there was a lot of heartache, and we haven't been able to replace that beautiful velvety tofu that Savita made using traditional techniques and high quality. You know, it was a very high quality product. So it's just to close the loop in there. But Emma, before I leave it to you to do the handoff.
Yep. No, I was just going to say, Lisa's just asked if there's going to be any more soil health workshops. We don't have any immediate plans to do so, but David, would you like to talk about what you do a bit more?
Sure, yeah. So we'll just, at Logan City Council have just funded us, Christy will do the job actually in November to do a day on soil health and erosion, and it's been run by Logan City Council and Land for Wildlife.
Oh, that's
So
great.
I'm not sure their venue, but that's been put on. So Christy will go down to that, and it'll talk a little bit more about managing the water cycle and particularly erosion in that hilly country in the scenic rim. So there's that one, but also, Lisa, we do run online little mini courses these days as well. We're doing more and more of these kind of short, sharp professional development courses. So we've got making biofertilizers on farm, making compost on farm, and the Reboot Your Soil. Like we've got, they're sort of 5-part online mini courses. So we're having more and more of them. Plant diversity ones next year with Simon, grazing with Judy Earle. So we're trying to create a whole lot of mini, what I call short, sharp online things. And we keep it small, so small groups of 15 people, and everyone has their own soil test or own property, and everyone can kind of work through as a group. So yeah, we've got, if you get in touch through our our Facebook/website, you can get in the loop, have an e-newsletter.
Yeah, great. I'll put the link in the follow-up email too.
Thanks very much, Emma. Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, and Rob, if you don't have anything burning, we might close off. Thank you so much, Lisa. Again, congratulations on winning the Humungous Fungus Award for 2023.
Thank you.
Round of
Thank you.
applause.
Very excited and honoured.
Oh, lovely. And thank you again, David, for being such a legend.
It's been great.
And Rob, thanks very much for asking the questions and holding the conversation. And just a little bit about what we're up to these days. Some of you have asked that for an update on what Rob and I are up to post Food Connect. We are kind of, doing a lot of work around the shed still. Food Connect shed's going through transition to new management at the moment, and our AGM's coming up. So 500 plus care holders are all invited to our first AGM. So that'll be exciting. That's on the 15th of October. All are welcome to the shed to attend. And also the Food Connect Foundation has been successful in getting a couple of grants this year, mainly to do with 3 specific areas of food system work. So the first one is to basically document a replication strategy for a regional food hub, and that will take into account mapping where we think a whole bunch of food hubs could pop up in the next 2 to 5 years, that could assist with the regionalisation of Australia's food systems. So that's kind of like more around the hard infrastructure required, as well as an investment kind of strategy to go with that. The other projects that we're doing includes value chain coordination. So that's more like the soft infrastructure required that really develops the relationships between great growers looking after their soils and also providing institutional contracts into bigger markets for them. So trying to capture farmers who are kind of missing in the middle, who don't have ready access to traditional markets, but are doing really good things on their land, and trying to connect the two, buyers and growers, to give them more of a market. So that's a tough piece of work, and it's very much relationship based. So we're in the midst of that one at the moment. And the third aspect is to basically map specifically Southeast Queensland's alternative food system, and to work out where the connections between all the players, all the actors in the system need support, and to try and identify the challenges associated with, access to markets, or it could be grower development, it could be things like access to land, it could be consumer education. So having a look at the whole system and working out where in Southeast Queensland we can future-proof and become a more resilient food system overall. So we'll be running a few workshops at the throughout next year related to that, to try and engage everyone in the food community around, creating a more food resilient Southeast Queensland. So if you have any interest or questions about any of those projects, or would like to participate, please get in touch with us, because we would love to hear from you. They're live projects, and we're sort of taking a very dynamic approach to the project. So things change every day, but we should be completed those mostly by March, April next year. So that's us for now. Thank you everyone for attending. We didn't get as many online as we'd hoped. We had a few registrations, but something must have come up for a few of them, but that's okay. But look, thanks so much for your participation. And again, congratulations, Lisa, and hopefully we'll see you again.